Oh, this Facebook. What the fuck?
Get me off of there. I owe people shit.
Girl. I don't like Instagram. Instagram hella messy.
How could someone you love, someone who is supposed to protect you, the father of your children, turn out to be the one who takes your life? How could this happen? How could a young mother, just started her journey of raising her children, be robbed of her future in the blink of an eye? At 19 years old, Davonye Cummings had just given birth to the most beautiful gift life could offer, twin daughters. 11 days later, her life was violently ripped away. But this wasn't a random tragedy. It was the deadly consequence of a relationship she had no chance of escaping. The story you are about to hear is one of betrayal, violence, and heartbreak, a tale of a young mother who never had the chance to truly live. But even more chilling than her death is the man responsible for taking her life. A man who should have never been in her world, yet somehow managed to stay there. Terrence Miles, a 34-year-old man with 5 felony convictions, was no stranger to violence. Yet, against all odds, he found himself in Davany's life. How did this happen? How did a teenage girl, barely starting her life, end up with someone like him? Someone with a past so dark it should have kept him far away from anyone, let alone a vulnerable young mother. On March 2nd, 2025, just days after Davany gave birth to twin girls, Terrence Miles made a decision that would haunt everyone involved. He shot Davany in the neck, leaving her to die. But instead of calling 911 to save her, he made a call to his mother. He tried to play it off as an accident. It was a mistake, he claimed, as if he had dropped a glass of water, not taken a life. But it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It was murder. What kind of man shoots the mother of his children and then tries to cover up as if it were nothing? What kind of predator goes so far as to end someone's life and then acts as though the world can just forget it ever happened? It didn't end there. While Davany lay dying, Terrence didn't even bother to call for help right away. His first instinct was to call his mother and shift the blame, pretending as if this was some kind of accident that could be swept under the rug. Minutes turned to hours as Davany fought for her life. But the damage was done. When the police arrived, it was too late. Terrence was arrested. But what justice could there really be for a mother of 4 who was taken from this world too soon? What would you do if you were in Davany's shoes? What would you do if the very person you trusted most was the one to end your life? This is a story of how one man's violence destroyed a young woman's future, a mother's love, and the hopes of 4 innocent children. Stay with us as we uncover the chilling details of this tragic murder and ask the questions no one else is willing to answer. What happened on that fateful day, and why was it allowed to happen in the first place? If you enjoy real crime stories that uncover the truth, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us share real cases, spread awareness, and give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Davonye Cummings was a woman who lived in a small community, and she was known by many people around her. She was someone with a lot of dreams, love, and hope for the future. However, her story was one of unexpected challenges and heartbreak. Davonye Cummings was a young woman who had big plans for her life. She was a mother, a daughter, and a friend. Davany's life was full of love for her family and the people around her. She became a mother at a young age, and despite the difficulties she faced, she always tried her best to make life better for herself and her children. She had 4 children, all of whom she loved deeply. Recently, she received the best gift a mother could ask for: twin daughters, born on February 21st, 2025. Davany's life before the tragedy was filled with both joy and hardship. She was born and raised in a small community where everyone knew each other. Life in the small town was simple, but not always easy. She grew up in a close-knit family, and they always looked out for each other. But life wasn't always smooth for her. At just 19 years old, Davany became a mother. She had 4 children to care for, which wasn't easy. Being a young mother came with many challenges, but Davany did everything she could to give her children a happy and healthy life. She worked hard every day, taking care of her family and making sure her children had what they needed. Despite the struggles, Davany always kept a positive attitude. She dreamed of a better life for her children and herself. She wanted to give them opportunities that she didn't have growing up. She was determined to make sure her children were loved, well taken care of, and had the chance to succeed in life. Her love for them was the biggest part of her life. Before the tragedy struck, Davany's life was full of potential. She had dreams for herself and her children. She wanted to provide for her family and give her children opportunities to succeed. She hoped that one day her children would grow up to be happy and successful and that they would have better lives than she had. Davany was determined to build a better future. Even though the road was not always easy, she was strong and resilient. She knew the importance of hard work, love, and dedication. Her future was full of possibilities, and she believed that with her children by her side, she could face anything that came her way. Her dreams were big, and she had the hope that someday her life would be filled with even more joy and success. She believed that the birth of her twin daughters was the first step towards making those dreams a reality. Davonye Cummings was a woman full of love and hope. Before the tragedy, she was living a life filled with dreams for her future and the future of her children. Her twin daughters were the greatest blessing in her life, and they gave her the hope and strength to keep going. She had big dreams, and her heart was filled with love and the desire to build a better life for her family. Terrence Miles was a 34-year-old man with a violent past. He had committed 5 serious crimes, including crimes that involved hurting others. These crimes were not minor. They showed that he was capable of causing harm. He had been arrested before and had a criminal record, but that did not stop him from being in Davonye Cummings' life. Terrence's background made him someone who should not have been around anyone, especially a young, vulnerable woman like Davany. He had a history of violence, and his actions in the past showed that he was not someone who could be trusted. Yet, despite his criminal record, Terrence became a part of Davany's life, and he played a role in the birth of her twin daughters. Terrence was a father of Davany's twin daughters. However, he was not a loving partner or a caring father. His presence in her life was not one of support or protection. Instead, it was a relationship full of struggles, fear, and hurt. For someone like Davany, who was still very young at 19 and already had several children to care for, having a man like Terrence in her life should have been a warning sign. Unfortunately, Davany allowed Terrence to stay in her life, possibly because she felt she needed him or because she feared being alone. Even though Terrence had a history of violence, Davany might have believed that he could change or that he would be a good father to their children. But over time, the truth became clear. Terrence was not a person who could bring anything good to her life. Instead of being a supportive partner, he became a source of pain. His violent past was not something that could be easily forgotten, and his actions showed that he was a dangerous person to be around. Despite all the red flags, Davany continued to allow him to be a part of her life. Davany was only 19 years old when she had her first child. By the time she had her twin daughters, she already had 3 other children to care for. Being a young mother is difficult enough, but having to deal with someone like Terrence made it even harder. Her life was full of struggles, and every day was a challenge. But despite the difficult circumstances, Davany always tried her best to care for her children and give them a better future. She loved her children deeply and wanted to protect them from harm. But even with all her love and strength, she could not protect herself from the person who was supposed to care for her. Terrence's presence in her life was a constant source of fear and chaos. He did not care for her or her children the way a father and partner should. Instead, he caused more harm, both emotionally and physically. Even though she faced these challenges, Davany never gave up. She kept pushing forward, doing everything she could to take care of her children. But in her search for support, she made the painful decision to stay in a toxic relationship with Terrence. The fear of being alone, combined with the hope that things might get better, led her to make a choice that would eventually lead to tragedy. Her life was filled with chaos because of Terrence. She wanted a safe and happy life for her children, but her relationship with him made that impossible. She had no idea how dangerous it was to stay with him, And even though she was aware of his violent past, she kept holding on, hoping that things would change. Having Terrence around in Davany's life made everything harder. Instead of being the support she needed, he added to the struggles. He should have been someone who helped her, someone who protected her and their children. But instead, he brought harm into their lives. Every day that Terrence stayed in her life was another day of fear and uncertainty. Davany could not escape the violence that he brought into her home. She was a young mother trying her best to take care of her children. But Terrence's actions made it harder for her to live the life she wanted for them. Terrence should never have been allowed into Davany's life. But despite his criminal past and violent nature, he stayed. His presence showed how difficult it can be for someone, especially a young woman, to escape from a toxic and abusive relationship. For Davany, the decision to stay with Terrence was one that ultimately led to her tragic end. Davonye Cummings deserved a life filled with happiness, peace, and safety for her children. Instead, her relationship with Terrence Miles brought chaos, pain, and heartache. She fought every day to provide for her children, but she could not escape the grip of violence that Terrence held over her life. On March 2nd, 2025, a tragedy unfolded that would forever change the lives of those who knew Davonye Cummings. The events of March 2nd, 2025, began like any other day. Davany and Terrence were in their home when something went terribly wrong. What exactly led to the explosion of violence is unclear, but what happened next was undeniable. In a fit of rage or recklessness, Terrence shot Davany in the neck. The gunshot would be fatal, and within minutes, her life was slipping away. Instead of immediately calling for help, Terrence's actions took a chilling turn. He picked up the phone and called his mother, telling her that it was all an accident. It was an accident, he said, but this wasn't an accident. Pulling the trigger of a gun, especially at someone, especially at the mother of your children, is not an accident. It is a decision, and that decision cost Davany her life. While Davany lay in her final moments, Terrence's mother, realizing the gravity of the situation, immediately called the police. She understood that what had just happened was not something that could be swept under the rug. By the time the police arrived, it was clear that Davany had already passed away from the gunshot wound. There was no chance of saving her. Terrence, realizing what he had done, was arrested on the spot. He was taken into custody and charged with murder. The events of that day would not just haunt him, but the entire community that had known Davany. Her 4 children, including the newborn twins, would now have to grow up without their mother, and no amount of legal action could ever undo the devastation of that loss. Davany was only 19 years old. She had so much potential, so much to look forward to, and so much love to give to her children. But her life was taken from her in a violent, senseless act by the man she should have been able to trust. Her death serves as a painful reminder of the dangers of domestic violence and the way it can affect not just the person directly involved, but an entire family. In one moment, everything changed. A mother was gone, her children left behind, and the man who took her life would face the consequences of his actions. Terrence's decision to take Davany's life was not only an act of violence, but also a failure of society to protect a young woman from someone who had a history of violence. It raises the question of how many more women are caught in similar situations, unable to escape the grip of someone they should trust, only to find themselves in danger. Davany's story is one of heartbreak, but also of a need for awareness and change. Domestic violence is a problem that needs to be confronted at every level. From the communities that allow abusers to stay in relationships unchecked, to the support systems that fail to offer help to those in need. We must do more to protect vulnerable individuals, especially young women and mothers, from the kind of fate that befell Davonye Cummings. The aftermath of Davany's death was felt deeply by her family, friends, and community. There was no happy ending here. No amount of justice or punishment for Terrence could bring her back, nor could it undo the damage caused by his violent actions. But it serves as a reminder that every life lost of violence is a life that could have been saved with more support, more intervention, and more awareness. Her death was not in vain, though. It has sparked conversations and raised awareness about the dangers of domestic violence. It is a call to action for communities everywhere to pay attention to the signs of abuse and take steps to protect those who are at risk. Davonye Cummings deserved more than what she got. She deserved to raise her children, to live her life, and to grow into the person she was meant to be. Instead, she became another tragic victim of violence. Her story will not be forgotten. And through her memory, we hope that other women will be able to find the strength and support they need to escape similar fates. Terrence Miles, the man who was responsible for Davany's death, was arrested shortly after the incident. The police arrived at the scene where they found Davany's lifeless body and immediately took action. Terrence was arrested and charged with murder because he intentionally took Davany's life when he shot her in the neck. The police also charged him with domestic violence, as the crime took place in an abusive relationship. Finally, he was charged with being a felon in possession of a firearm because he had a criminal record and was not legally allowed to own a gun. These charges meant that Terrence would face serious consequences in court. The murder charge was the most severe, and it showed that his actions would not go unpunished. However, despite the legal process that was set in motion, one thing became very clear. No matter how much punishment Terrence faced, it could never bring Davany back. Her death left a permanent mark on her family, and no amount of justice could heal the pain they would now carry forever. The effects of Davany's death were deeply felt by her family. Davany was just 19 years old, and she had 4 children. She was a young mother who had dreams for her future, as well as the future of her children. The birth of her twin daughters had filled her with joy, and she wanted to raise them in a loving, supportive home. However, Terrence's actions shattered this dream. Her 4 children will now grow up without their mother. This is the hardest part of the whole situation. Young children depend on their parents for love, care, and guidance. They look to their mother for comfort, safety, and support. But now, these children will have to grow up without that essential figure in their lives. They will face challenges that most children shouldn't have to experience at such a young age. The emotional toll on her family, especially her children, is unimaginable. They will have to carry the weight of losing their mother for the rest of their lives. And as they grow older, they will likely have many questions about why this happened and how to cope with the loss of someone so important to them. Davany's family will never be the same. Her friends and loved ones are left to mourn her passing, and her children will always feel the absence of their mother. While the legal system can hold Terrence accountable for his actions, it cannot undo the damage caused. The gap left by Davany's absence is something that can never be filled. While no legal punishment can fix what happened to Davany and her children, her story serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of domestic violence. The tragic events surrounding her death have opened up conversations about the importance of supporting young women, especially those in vulnerable relationships. Domestic violence is a serious issue that affects many families. It can happen to anyone, regardless of age or background, and it often happens in secret, with the victim suffering in silence. Unfortunately, in Davany's case, it was only after her death that the full extent of violence she endured came to light. Her story shows how important it is for people to speak out against violence and abuse and provide support to those who need help. One of the key lessons from this case is the need to protect young women, like Davany, from abusive relationships. Often, victims of domestic violence feel trapped, not knowing where to turn for help. They might fear leaving or feel like they have no other options. But it's crucial for communities to create environments where young women can feel safe and supported. Davany's death may have been a painful tragedy, but it has sparked a conversation about what needs to change. It is important for people to recognize the signs of abuse and take steps to intervene before things reach a breaking point. The more people understand the dangers of domestic violence, the better equipped they will be to help others in similar situations. The legal consequences of Terrence Miles' actions will play out in court, but the damage caused by his crime cannot be undone. Davany's 4 children will grow up without their mother, and her family will live with the pain of her loss. While the legal system may bring justice to some extent, it cannot erase the heartache left behind. But Davany's story is also a reminder to us all the importance of raising awareness about domestic violence. It shows us that we must stand together to protect vulnerable individuals and prevent such tragedies from happening in the future. We owe it to Davany, her children, and others in similar situations to create a safer, more supportive world for everyone. How can we better support young women who may be in abusive relationships? What steps can communities take to help prevent domestic violence? How can we raise awareness to ensure that no one has to suffer like Davany did? May Davonye Cummings rest in peace. Davany's death is not just a sad story. It is a lesson for everyone. Her tragic end shows us how dangerous domestic violence can be. Domestic violence happens when someone is hurt or abused by a partner or someone they love. It can happen to anyone, and it often starts slowly, with small signs that something is wrong. But if these signs are ignored, it can grow into something much worse, just like it did in Davany's case. Davany's death is a reminder to all of us that we need to pay attention to the signs of abuse in the people around us. Sometimes, people might not speak up about the violence they are facing. But if we pay attention to their behavior, to changes in how they act, or to things they might say, we can often see the warning signs before it is too late. We need to make sure that if someone is in danger, they get the help they need before something terrible happens. Communities need to be more aware of the dangers of domestic violence. People who are in toxic, harmful relationships should not have to feel trapped. They need support from their friends, family, and the people around them to escape before it's too late. Davany's story shows us that no one should have to live in fear or pain because of the people they trust. We all need to do our part to help protect others from this kind of harm. As we remember Davonye Cummings, we should also think about the lessons her story teaches us. Her life was taken too soon, but we can use her story to inspire change. It is important to remember the dangers of domestic violence and how we can all help to stop it. We should work together to protect young women and children from being hurt by people they trust. Davany's death should be a call to action. We need to make sure that future generations of young women are safe, that they know they can reach out for help if they are in danger, and that they are supported in leaving harmful relationships. No one should have to face what Davany did. Her death is a tragedy, but if her story helps save others from the same fate, it can become part of her lasting legacy. May Davonye Cummings rest in peace. Though her life was taken too soon, her story can help inspire others to protect the ones they love and work toward creating safer communities for all. Let her memory be a reminder to care for one another and to never ignore the signs of abuse. What can communities do to help protect young mothers from abusive relationships? It's important for communities to be aware of the signs of abuse. What can we do to help the people around us feel safe and supported, especially young mothers who might be at risk? How do you think domestic violence could be prevented in cases like Davany's? What changes need to happen to prevent people from falling into dangerous relationships? How can we ensure that those who are suffering from abuse get the help they need before it's too late? What steps can we take to make sure that people like Terrence Miles are held accountable for their actions before more lives are lost? Holding people responsible for their actions is important to stop future tragedies. How can we make sure that those who hurt others are held accountable for what they've done? It is important to understand that no one should ever have to face such a situation. People like Terrence should never be allowed to hurt others, and we must do everything we can to help those who are in toxic and abusive relationships. Davany's story is a reminder of the dangers of staying in relationships that are full of violence and abuse. She deserved better, and we must work toward creating a world where young mothers like Davany are safe and supported. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.